We left off with talking about since by a man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. So God had made a plan that he would send the one who would justify us. He requires justification for all of our sins, payment, and he sends the one who actually does it. And that was Jesus. And so we're going to backtrack a little bit here, which we'll do probably several times during these sessions, but we're going to go back to Genesis 11. And in Genesis 11, we find that that's where we read about the story of the Tower of Babel. And the unique thing there was that at that time, it says all the nations were one. It was just one nation, one language. Everything was united in that at that time. And so what happens at the Tower of Babel is they have a plan. God doesn't like their plan. They're trying to invade the heavens, basically, and become like God, I guess, again. That seems to be a common theme. And so God confuses them with languages. And so when he sends down these languages, they can't communicate with each other, so they divide into separate language groups, nations. And so God takes one nation and makes them into many with this gift of languages, if you call it a gift. Well, we go to the New Testament in Acts chapter 2, and we see the whole thing reversed. At that time, it says there's people from every nation under heaven. And they're there, and what happens is when the Holy Spirit comes, all the people from all these different nations start speaking different languages. And at that point, what he does is, in this situation, is in Babel, he took one nation, made them into many, and here in Acts 2, he reverses this, takes many nations and makes them into one new nation, one chosen people, one nation of God. And so it's interesting, these themes run all throughout the Bible, and God just takes something you see in one place and changes it around and fulfills a prophetic message by just changing it around. So we go back to Genesis 11. At this time, God needs to choose now one nation, one people group through whom he's going to send his chosen one, through he's going to send the seed of the woman, the promised Messiah, the crusher of the head of the serpent. And so he chooses in chapter 12 of Genesis, and this is where we get into the heart of the whole rest of the Bible, is Genesis 12, is the fulfillment, or the choosing of Abraham, or Abram at the time. So I just want to go look at this, read this part. It says in chapter 12, verse 1, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country, from your relatives, and from your father's house, to the land which I will show you. And I will make you," here's the promises, "I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And so we see these promises given to Abram, and there's quite a few there. God will bless Abram. He'll bless him himself. He'll make him a great nation. Says he'll make him a blessing. Abram will be a blessing to others. And then it says that he will bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. And then finally, through him, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And that's the big promise we're looking at, that there's going to be one that's going to come through Abram who's going to bless all the families of the earth. Once again, pointing to what we talked about earlier, that this whole Bible is Christocentric. It's focused, it's centered on Jesus Christ. It's focused on Christ, the Messiah, the one who would come and be the crusher of the head, who would be the fulfillment of the sacrificed lamb. All of those things. And so God chooses, it has to come through someone. And so at this point, he chooses Abram. And he tells Abram he's going to be a great nation, but at this point, Abram's 75 years old. He's not a young guy. You know, we see some of the ages in Genesis are real old, but by this point, after the flood, and as we transition through chapter 11 and on, we see that the ages change, and now the general age, they'll live to about 120 or something like that. Well, Abram's 75 already. And, he doesn't have any children at this point. So we're looking at chapter 13, and we see once again, Abram has he's talking, I guess, he's come to the land and he's divided the land between him and his nephew Lot. We get to this point, it says, and God says to him, to Abram, the Lord said to Abram in verse 15, "For all the land which you see, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever." Now that's a major promise that, it depends on what we mean. What do you think forever means as to how long they'll have the land? Forever looks like probably this case means forever. "And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can be numbered." And so Abram's been looking around and he's having a hard time probably with this idea that he's going to be the father of many nations. He's going to be a father of a great nation. And he's 75 years old, and so God takes him out, tells him, if you can number the dust of the earth. Now that's not saying literally that his descendants will be the same number as the dust of the earth. Just like when later he takes him, looks at the stars of the sky, doesn't mean that every star, he's going to have a descendant from every star. It's the idea of when you look out and you see a group and say, can you immediately number that? No, they're too great to be numbered. You can't just look at it and say, oh, there's 14. Well, when you look at his descendants, they'll be innumerable to the eye, and as you look at them, you just try to count them. It's the same kind of what would we say, metaphor or whatever we're looking at, and we see 8 cars go by and 5 of them are Hondas, and we say everybody's driving a Honda. Well, we don't mean everybody's driving a Honda. We mean there's a lot of people driving Hondas. And this doesn't mean they'll be exactly the number of the dust of the earth or the stars of the sky. But the promise is that the land will be his forever, and his descendants will look like the dust of the earth. So he doesn't have Isaac yet, he doesn't have his son, he doesn't have the promised son yet. Between this part we're looking at here and when he gets his son, there's another chapter that's in the Bible, Genesis 14, with a story about these wars and a strange man named Melchizedek. Now Melchizedek is a picture, we believe, of actually Jesus. In fact, some people believe it is Jesus, manifesting before he's born in the earth, because Melchizedek is a priesthood, it says, who's a priest on the basis, and it talks about in Hebrews, on the basis of an indestructible life. He's got no beginning and no end. And so it's a strange story here, and Abram actually pays tithes to this Melchizedek, and he blesses him. Melchizedek blesses Abram. And so we have a whole story that's there. We're not going to cover a lot of that, but we may touch on it when we get to the New Testament. So we go on to chapter 15. And here we've got Abram has a vision. Okay? The Lord tells him he will greatly be rewarded. Abraham expresses to God that as he understands the situation right now, I don't have any children. At this point, he's getting pretty old. He says, okay, God, as I understand it then, Eliezer, my servant, one who was born in my house, shall be my heir. Okay, he will be the one that will become the promise of this nation and whatever. God takes him outside again, says no. Takes him out, shows him the stars of the sky. So in verse 5 it says of chapter 15, he took him outside and said, now look toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. Then he believed in the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. So Abraham believed in the Lord, and the Lord reckoned that faith, that belief, as righteousness. Abram finally got the idea. He looks up, he says, okay, God, I believe you. I believe you. It's kind of hard to believe you, but I believe you that you're going to give me these descendants. It's not going to be through Eliezer, my servant. It's going to be through my son, whom you've promised. So he believes in Yahweh at this point, and it's reckoned to him as righteousness. So his belief, his trust, his faith in God, we see this taken from this situation right here in Genesis 15:6. It becomes one of the key passages in all of the New Testament as we look and see that Abraham received his promises on the basis of faith, not on the work that he did, but on the basis of his faith in God.